Welcome to MTG Friends, I'm Ryan. Let's go ahead and do a Commander deck tech, nay, a Commander deck upgrade to a pre-constructed deck out of Kaldheim that has Lathril Blade of the Elves. This is a pre-constructed deck out of Kaldheim that they had coined Elven Empire. It is tribal elves. Let's go ahead and add some spice to this thing and let's talk about the packages. Alright, first up we have Tribal, because this is going to be Tribal Elf. We have Protection, the land base, which we have swapped out a lot of stuff for some higher power land, as well as some doubling up, because we're going to be doing some doubling season type stuff with +1/+1 counters and tokens, etc., etc. We have the removal. We're doing spot removal as opposed to mass removal because we're dealing with a board that we want to have wide and big and ever getting larger. We also have ramp package, a lot of mana dorks in here, a few mana rocks, but because we are in green and we are in elves, we're going to be able to really lever some mana ramp pretty quickly and efficiently. We have the elf package, of course, the draw package, a couple alt win cons, or should I say win cons, that will get us over that mountain and get us to the finish line, a control piece, and then of course we have the sideboard slash maybe board. In this particular build slash upgrade, the maybe board is all of the cards that we have swapped out of the pre-constructed version, so they'll be there in case you have cards you want to swap back in, or there's cards that I'm recommending that either you're not going to run because of budgetary reasons or you prefer one of the other cards. So there you go, there you have it. Alright, so let's jump in with the commander itself and go on to the other packages. Lathril Blade of the Elves. It is a 4-drop 2/3 legendary creature elf noble. It's got menace, which is, I'll take it. Whenever Lathril Blade of the Elves deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. So we're not concerned about Lathril making more than 2 tokens when it hits, so we're not like running any swords or those kinds of things to buff up Lathril, just as is, or the natural buff of all the synergies we have going on with the tribal aspect. And then it also has tap 10 untapped elves you control. Each opponent loses 10 life and you gain 10 life. So that's a nice little bonus if you can keep your commander out there. We are going to be going wide most of the time. Even with mass removal from your opponents, we should be able to start making it go wide immediately afterwards with this kind of a build that we got going on. All right, here we go into the packages. Let's start with Tribal. Alright, we got Coat of Arms. It's a 5-drop. Each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. What a great staple in anything you're doing that's tribal. This one, it's for elves, obviously. If you're doing other things like goblins or spirits or whatever, definitely consider Coat of Arms. This thing is fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous. Now, Crown of Skemfar. This is right out of the Kaldheim Commander deck itself. It is a first printing. Yes, is that correct? Yes, it is. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each elf you control and has reach. I'll take it. And then for 3, you can return Crown of Skemfar from your graveyard to your hand. So it's got some sticking power as well. I like it. I liked it enough to leave it in and not swap it out for something else. Door of Destinies. Talk about tribal, folks. If you're running tribal, definitely consider this card, and we are definitely considering it in this build. It's a 4-drop, which is very reasonable. As Door of Destiny enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Elves. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, and remember it's cast, not put onto the battlefield, put a charge counter on Door of Destinies. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each charge counter. This makes your creatures get real big real quick. My buddy Josh, like I referenced earlier, he has a goblin deck and this is running it, and those goblins get insanely big quickly with Door of Destinies in play. Elderfang Venom. It's a 4-drop enchantment. Attacking elves you control have death touch. Whenever an elf you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. I like it. I like it. This is actually in the pre-con, so hey, let's leave it in there because it's great. Herald's Horn, also another staple in tribal. It's a 3-drop, which is great, and it gives a reduction of 1 to cast creatures of whatever tribe you're doing. And at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card of that chosen type, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. So it's great. It's going to allow you to get more stuff into your hand, reduces the cost, etc., etc. All right, now we are in removal. Yet another great Golgari color. It is this spell can't be countered. Destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. Abrupt Decay is a great removal spell. Assassin's Trophy is also way up there on the scales of great removal spells. You remove a permanent and then they get a basic land for their troubles. And it's a permanent, so you can actually hit one of their lands too. Deadly Rollick, I seem to be putting this in all sorts of decks that I'm putting together because I just think it's that good. If you got a commander out, it costs you nothing to cast, and it's exiled target creature. Force of Vigor, another great card. It costs you 4 unless you dump a green card out of your hand when it's not your turn, and you destroy up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. It's a great spell even if you end up spending the 4 mana. If you spend no mana on it, even better. Nullmage Shepherd, also in removal. Tap 4 untapped creatures you control, destroy artifact or enchantment. There's a good chance we're going to have those creatures to tap. Reclamation Sage, another nice spot removal spell. When it enters the battlefield, you can destroy a target artifact or enchantment. Ruthless Winnower. This is right out of the PreCon deck itself. It is great. This is a first printing. It is an Elf Rogue 4/4 for 5. I'm not super happy that it costs 5. I would have liked to see it with 4, but hey, we'll take it because it does some super janky stuff. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a non-elf creature. Yes, Elf Tribal. That is so great. I love it. All right, Viridian Zealot for 2 green. You can also spend colorless green, sacrifice it, and destroy target artifact or enchantment. Another great removal creature spell. Beast Whisperer, we're into draw now. So when you cast a creature spell, draw a card. And then of course the original gangster Tudor, Demonic Tudor. Pay 2, get the card into your hand. Occam Adversary, what a great elf creature utility card. It costs you 4, but if your opponent has green, then it costs you 2 less to cast. That is fabulous. And that's not even the end. It also has Death Touch, and when it does damage to a player, you draw a card. Very robust card. Realm Walker, right out of Kaldheim. It's a changeling, so therefore it's an elf in this particular instance. When it enters the battlefield, you choose elves, of course. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of your library. Yes, I like that spell. Return of the Wild Speaker, becoming a very good stable card in green for draw mechanics. You can draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, which is what we're doing, and non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn. So you also have the versatility that if you want to go wide and big and you need to get that +3/+3 buff, you can. Otherwise, you can draw cards. It's just a great card to include. Sylvan Library, the janky broken card that allows you to get 2 additional cards in your hand for 4 life each. Just wow. And talk about wow out of Throne of Eldraine. The Great Henge, this card is here to stay, folks. As of this recording, it is a staple in Standard. We see this in lots and lots of Commander decks. This thing is not going anywhere. Spell cost X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. And then add 2 green, and you gain 2 life. And then if that wasn't enough, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on any creature that enters the battlefield. Wow, wow, wow. Moving on. I mean, jeez, that thing is just fabulous. Vampiric Tudor, you put a card on top of your library, costs you 2 life. Vanquisher's Banner, this is in draw, even though it's also tribal because of that lovely draw mechanic. Whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card. Yes, I love this card. It does cost 5, but that's okay. And it also has the added benefit of giving +1/+1 to all of your creatures as well. And then we got Worldly Tutor. You can tutor up a creature to the top of your library. And now we have a couple win cons. And it's mainly considered win con because if you drop this thing onto the battlefield and you've got creatures there, you're going to be hitting for a lot. Craterhoof Behemoth, it's 5 green, 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 a haster that when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So if you're wide at all, everything gets +X, and this thing has haste, you're going to be whack-a-moling some serious shenanigans right there. And then Finale of Devastation is kind of similar ilk here in the form of a sorcery. For X green green, search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If X is 10 or more, creatures you control get +X and gain haste until end of turn. So you could actually go fetch up the Craterhoof with this thing, and then serious craziness incurs. All right, now we're in control. And when I originally spoiled this card in a previous episode, my jaw, metaphorically speaking, hit the ground. I thought this thing was so powerful. And it is. Opposition Agent for 3. It's a 3/2 human rogue with flash, which allows you to take control of an opponent's turn while they're searching their libraries. So they go to tutor something, you now take control, tutor for what you want, for however many cards they're tutoring for, and then you get to exile them and then play them whenever you want until the end of the game. And this thing doesn't even have to be on the battlefield in order to still play those out of exile. I mean, this card is insane. Include this. Definitely include this. It's very cool. Heroic Intervention, we're into Protection. This is permanent you control, gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Then Steely Resolve. Creatures of the chosen type can't be the target of spells or abilities. So that is just very, very fantastic protection. Doesn't protect you from mass removal, but from everything else, it's a pretty solid protection there. Veil of Summer. Oh, I love this card. I loved it in Standard. I still loved it when it was banned, and I love it in Commander. Draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until end of turn. Funny little story with Veil of Summer. When I was drafting a lot during this time, I kept grabbing Veil of Summer because I tended to end up in green. And so I ended up with so many of them. And you know what's nice about that? The thing cost about $8 to $10 as an uncommon, even right now. So, hey, hope you also picked up a bunch of Veil Summers because I think it's going to be around for a while. All right, one of the very few non-elf creatures. If one or more 1/1 counter would be put on creatures you control, twice that many 1/1 counters are put on it instead. Yeah, and it's in Golgari, so me like this card. And it's financially cheap card, so hey, it's all good. All good in the hood. Alright, more doubling up here. We got Doubling Season. This thing is great for whenever you're doing tokens or +1/+1 counters. It doubles up on both of them. Elven Ambush. This is also out of Kaldheim. This is just fun, janky elf stuff. It's for 4. Create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token for each elf you control. Yep, might have to break into song. But instead, we can just move on. Herald Unites the Elves is a 4-drop right out of Kaldheim. Kaldheim was very nice to elves, I must say. Mill 3 cards, you may put an elf or Tyvar card from your graveyard onto the battlefield. And even though we haven't gotten to it yet, we are actually running the Planeswalker Tyvar. So you could actually make that combo off, if you're that lucky. And then its next part of the saga is put a 1/1 counter on each elf you control. On each. Every single one. What? That's fabulous. And this is actually a financially cheap card, so hey, it's all good, man. Whenever an elf you control attacks this turn, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/+1 until end of turn. Then finally, in the doubling up section, we have the most financially spendy card out of the Kaldheim set, at least as of right now. It's Vorinclex Monstrous Raider. That is a 6-drop, 6/6 legendary creature Phyrexian Praetor. We do not mind that this costs 6 because it is a Doubling Season rolled into a creature that even has more bonus than a Doubling Season. It's got Trample, Haste, That's cool. If you would put one or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. So it's out of the scope of this particular build, but let's say you're doing poison counters. Whoa, you can double them up because this thing's in play. That is bananas. Let's say you're doing a Traxa deck, poison counters with Vorin collects. Oh man, that's serious shenanigans. I digress. Let's get back to elves. And then it also has the additional craziness of if an opponent would put one or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half that many. Wow, dude, very cool card. All right, let's jump into the elves. Abomination of Llanowar. I believe this came out of Commander Legends and then got reprinted for this. Yes, it did. Vigilance Menace. It gets power and toughness based off of the elves you have in play and in your graveyard. Allosaurus Shepherd. This is out of Jumpstart. If you don't have this card and don't have the finances to be getting this card, just put in something from the sideboard, put in another elf. It's probably going to be reprinted, but don't hold me to that. As of right now, it's still in the $90 range. So if you have it, run it. If you don't, no need. But it is powerful. It's pretty amazing, especially for a 1-drop. It can't be countered, and green spells you control can't be countered as well. And then it also has 4 colorless green. Till end of turn, your elves turn into 5/5 dinosaurs and elves. Dinosaur elf. That's pretty weird. Somebody should draw a picture of that. Deathrite Shaman, staple in Golgari. This thing allows you to tap it and exile instants and sorceries or exile creatures from graveyards. I mean, that's really good utility right there. Eladamri, Lord of Leaves. It's a 2-green 2/2. All elves gain Forest Walk, and elves can't be the target of spells or abilities. Elvish Archdruid. It's a 3-drop. All your elves get +1/+1, and you can tap it and add mana of green for each elf you control. That is serious ramp right there. Elvish Champion, old school elf. It gives all of your elves +1/+1 and Forest Walk. Elvish Vanguard. Whenever another elf comes into play, put a 1/1 counter on Elvish Vanguard. So you're seeing all these things are really going to start synergizing together real well. Elvish Warmaster comes out of Kaldheim. I love the fact that this is a 2-drop, 2/2 elf warrior. And whenever an elf enters the battlefield, it makes a 1/1 elf warrior. And it only does that one time each turn. And the reason they have that written that way in the text is they don't want the 1/1 elf to then trigger to make another infinite elf shenanigans going on. Then it also has 5 colors, green. Elves you control get +2/+2 and gain Death Touch until end of turn. Not super excited that that costs that much, but it's just added in the card, and there might be occasion where you do that. This one I like more because it's 2 green. We'll get to that in a second though. Azuri Renegade Leader for 3, 2/2 legendary creature elf warrior with green, regenerate another target elf, and then for that 2 green elf creatures you control to get +3/+3 and gain trample. I would much rather have the trample, especially in this kind of a build, than having Death Touch, because we're gonna have times where we're gonna make those elves really huge, and to be able to blast through our opponent's creatures with trample is just groovy-licious, man. Groovy-licious. Gaia's Herald. It's a 2-drop 1/1 elf. Creature spells can't be countered by spells or abilities. Imperious Perfect also gives the +1/+1 to elves, and you can tap and create a elf warrior creature token. Jiraga Warcaller. Let's unpack this one for a second because it's got a few things going on. Alright, it's got multi-kicker, which just in simple terms means you can pay it additional times, any number of times if you have mana to burn. And it comes in with +1/+1 counters on it for each time that you kick it. And then other elf creatures control get +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on it. So that can get really out of hand really quickly, especially if you have a board presence and then you multi-kick this 2, 3, 4 times, just depending on what kind of mana base you got going on. Very cool elf. Marwyn the Nurturer, another very cool elf. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Marwyn the Nurturer. And then you get to tap it for mana equal to Marwyn's power. So that one is just very mana heavy for sure if you can keep it alive. Shaman of the Pack. This is a reprint in the PreCon. When Shaman of the Pack enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. So, funny enough, this is the card that actually allowed me to win when I was playing the PreCon deck against my buddy Josh. And I barely squeaked by. But this one actually was the alt win condition in that particular game we played. So, in the rematch, maybe this thing will help too. Tajuru Preserver, 2/2/1 Elf Shaman. Spells and abilities your opponent control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents. So this is going to work really well against opponents that are trying to make you sack crap. And so, hey, you gotta say, nope, you gotta get rid of this first. Gotta get rid of this. Alright, Timber Watch Elf. You can tap it and give +X until end of turn, where X is the number of elves on the battlefield. And then Wildborn Preserver, I really liked when this came out in Throne of Eldraine, and I still like it for Commander. It has Flash, Reach. Whenever another non-human creature enters the battlefield under control, you may pay X. When you do, put X/1/1 counters on Wildborn Preserver. So you can fly this in at the end of your opponent's end step, right before you're playing, and then have it on the battlefield ready to go with no summoning sickness, and then you can buff it up. Yes, that's what elves should do. Elf shenanigans. Yeva Nature's Herald. It's 4-drop 4/4 legendary elf shaman. It's got Flash, which then gives your creatures Flash that are green. I love that card. Alright, we're going to blast through the lands pretty quickly. It's worth noting that some of these are the more spendy versions. You know, we have the Shock Land version, the original Dual Land for Golgari Colors. We got the Fetch Land in there. You could easily swap those out for some of the sideboard we have of the original pre-constructed deck with some of the tapped dual lands and even basic lands if you want. Alright, let's blast through this. Agadeem's Awakening. We have this so that we can either tap it for black mana, paying 3 life, or we can use it to bring stuff out of our graveyard. Original Bayou. Command Tower. Darkboard Pathway. This is the pathway for Golgari Colors. This is the one where you have the dual land in your hand and then you choose one or the other when it gets on the battlefield. We're running 14 forests. Okay, so we have Gaia's Cradle in here. If you don't have it, swap it out. If you do have it, amen to you, brother or sister. Play it because it works great for this kind of a build. But again, you need to have it. Don't go out and buying Gaia's Cradle just to play this deck. I mean, no, don't do that. Gilt-Leaf Palace, specifically for elves, and it allows you to show an elf out of your hand, and then you get to bring it in untapped. Nurturing Peatland, another Golgari Colors for 1 life. The Shockland, Path of Ancestry. This is so that we can scry when we play a creature like that. Then we got Swamp, Tainted Woods, another way of getting our Golgari Colors. Verdant Catacombs is the fetch land for Golgari Colors. Again, swap that out if you don't have it. Alright, now we are into ramp. We have the Arcane Signet. There's most of the time you're going to be running this in your decks for Commander. There are exceptions, but in this one, this is not an exception. Elves of the Deep Shadow lets us do some mana fixing if we need it. We can tap, add black to your mana pool, and it costs you 1 life. Mana Dork. The Signet for Golgari. Mana Dork. Mana Crypt, so we can do a Soul Ring that costs us nothing. Costs us 3 life if we lose a coin flip. Oracle of Muldiah. This is where we can play an additional land, and we can also play land off the top of our library. Priest of Titania. Yes, we cannot have an elf tribal without having Priest of Titania. Costs a mere 2 to drop onto the battlefield, and you can tap it to add green to your mana pool for each elf on the battlefield. We can ramp so insanely quickly with this on the battlefield, turn 3, turn 4, etc., etc. Sky Shroud Claim allows us to go fetch 2 forests, which can include our Shock Land or Dual Land, and put them onto the battlefield untapped. That's why I really like Sky Shroud Claim. Soul Ring, of course. Talisman of Resilience for our Golgari Colors. Next in ramp is Tyvar Kell. So this is a very spicy addition from Kaldheim. It's got a very cool stuff going on. Not only can we fetch this up with the saga we're running, but it's also got elves you control have tap, add black mana. So now we can use all of our elves to create black mana for us. Wow, wow, wow. And then it's actually got more cool stuff. So it is a 4-drop, 3 loyalty with the tapping mechanic of elves. It's got the +1, which allows us to put a +1/+1 counter on an elf and then untap it. Then it gains Death Touch until end of turn. These cards always do so much stuff nowadays. And then it also can allow you to create an elf warrior for nothing. No uptick or downtick. And then its ultimate is pretty spicy too if you manage to get there. Whenever you cast an elf spell, it gains haste until end of turn and you draw 2 cards. So this just is all around elf awesomeness wrapped into this planeswalker. Alright, and then we have come back to the beginning. Lathril Blade of the Elves. This upgrade is going to be really fun to play. The original PreCon was just absolute fun as well. So if you have the cards, go ahead and do this upgrade. Gather some of them as well. You also have the choice of swapping some back in. Hope you enjoyed watching this. I think this is going to be a really fun deck for you to play, and you'll have a lot of staying power with it. I love Elf Tribal. I love Goblin Tribal. I love Tribal whenever you can pull it off. This one is going to be great. All right, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you check out our episodes and tell your friends. All right, thanks.